Hello, everybody. My name is John Romano, and today I'm going to be interviewing somebody who describes themselves as an ex-Columbiner. Now, this is a term that I didn't even know about until recently, and apparently, Columbiner refers to the community of people who seem pretty interested, let's face it, kind of obsessed with Columbine, the shooters, and they look up to those types of people. So, of course, with my background, people always ask me about these situations, and I'm interested to know more about this. So excuse me, I've asked somebody to come and join us tonight. They're going to be completely anonymous. They're not going to be on camera, but I want them to come on and share their story, share why they think the way that they do, and how we can prevent others from going down. At the end of the day is the goal that we all want, is to be able to shed light onto this darkness and how to help people. And here we go. I am going through it now. Hey
Hi,
Lou, how are you?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. So you and I have been we've been talking for a little while recently, right? You had reached
Yep.
out to me. You've been a follower of mine, and tonight I wanted to bring you on because I think that it's very important that we be able to talk with people like you who have this thought process, who have, as you'll probably tell us more, fascination with Columbine, with the shooters, and with other similar shooters as well. And it's something that we want to be able to shed light onto that darkness and hopefully help some people in the future. So why don't you why don't you start off by just kind of telling us a little bit about what is the Columbiner community and what originally drew you to it?
Well, thank you for having me on. Well, in my own words, the whole thing with like being a Columbiner is having that sort of, well, there's kind of like different sides of it. There's the side that like outright just glorifies the killers and just like, oh, they're so cool. And then you just have this immense fascination with them, or you resonate with them to an extent because you see yourself in them.
Mhm.
And then there's just kind of that side that is just kind of in it for like the informational aspect. And oftentimes the lines can get quite blurry and quite thin. So, like, there's a whole subreddit called r/Columbine Killers. So it's just a subreddit dedicated to information about the killers themselves.
Yeah.
And you could argue that those people are Columbiners, just not the type that glorifies or resonates or thinks that they're cool or anything. They're just kind of in it for that informational aspect, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but I was a part of that glorification side of things where I saw myself in them, and it really took a toll on me for a really long while.
How so? What do you mean it took a toll on you?
I think, well, mentally, just when you're in that state of mind where you're constantly consuming Columbine related media and you're just thinking about it all the time. And well, what drew me in first was um, one of my friends started talking to me about it, and she was like, "Oh, hey, um, check out like this case from however many years ago." And at first, it made me really
Hmm.
uncomfortable. And I was like, hey man, I don't want to talk to you anymore because of this. And so for a week we weren't talking, and for a week I was doing that kind of um, research, and I, not in a literal sense, fell in love, but I became like infatuated with Eric and
Hmm.
Dylan, and I got back in contact with him and was like, hey, sorry for totally ghosting you. We're literally these guys. So then we just kind of became this insufferable group of these two Columbine obsessed girls, and we kind of drifted. And because she stopped getting as interested in it, but I was still,
Yeah.
within its grasp, you could say. And I joined a lot of online communities on Discord, on Tumblr, on Twitter, and there's a lot of people out there who are in the true crime community. And I don't mean the true crime community as like, oh, just people interested in true crime. It's like, no, these people are obsessed.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's like fan edits, there's fan art, there's like all of this stuff as if it's like a fandom for a TV show or movie series.
Hmm.
Um, and it does, yeah, Gigi, Gigi Seeger 222. It does make you mentally unwell. It really does kind of amplify any existing depression or anxiety you have
Yeah.
because it's when you're resonating with like, especially these people, Eric or Dylan, who are both depressed and disturbed. And if you start seeing yourself like that and
Hmm.
um, projecting it, whether it be through your clothing style or your music taste or, you know, how you speak, how you look at the world, especially. I think that's what a lot of it was my viewpoint in the
Yeah.
world and how I was looking at the world. I felt like I was looking at through like a school shooter lens almost all the time. Like everyone hates me and I hate everyone. And
Yeah.
I'm just
It,
this
it's
big,
sorry to cut
yeah.
you off, but
No,
it
it's fine.
sounds like a self-fulfilled prophecy where you see yourself in them and then you start acting more like them and then you start kind of going down that pathway being more and more like them, not because you were originally destined to be, but because you kind of, like you said, you're consuming all of this media and it changes the way that you're thinking and it kind of morphs you, like you said, into somebody with the thought process of one of these shooters.
Yeah, and we've seen this happen with like already shooters that have existed, like Nicholas Cruz. He was infatuated with Columbine.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Lanza was interested in Columbine. He referenced it in some online posts. Um, who else? Randy Stair, the or Andrew Blaze, whatever their name was also a Columbiner. So it's a very real thing
Yeah.
that a lot of people experience and go through. And I also did somewhat resonate with Elliot Rodger,
So
pro
who is
Demon
Elliot
Diana.
Rodger? For those of
Um,
us who don't know, because I don't.
so Elliot Rodger was a male mass shooter in um, I believe it was like some college town in California where he was this disgruntled incel who was very frustrated with the fact that he couldn't get a date, he couldn't get women, but he was also just very spoiled in general, and because of that, he wrote a manifesto and everything about it. But he was like this famous incel
Hmm.
killer. But I mean, I related more towards yeah, Isla Vista. I always related more towards Eric and Dylan because of the immense self-hatred that I had towards myself, and I still unfortunately suffer with it. And I also, you know, sometimes do suffer with like the like oh like I'll see like a meme or one of my friends will joke about, you know, Columbine or something, and I have to like fight it off. I have to be like, no, you're not like that anymore. You can't do that. You can't laugh at it. It's not
Right.
funny. You know what I mean? Or it'll like remind me of when I was super into that. Like there's, you know, so much music around it. There's this whole like little culture, and what makes it so appealing to an extent is the aesthetic of it.
Hmm.
And we were talking about this, like the aesthetic of like having that control and having that power over a
Yeah.
situation, and having that like big man with a gun, and I'm like, you know what, I'm here to kick ass and take names and get my revenge on all these people who have wronged me, and leave a lasting impression because I'm not just going to go out and like kill myself, you know, all alone and stuff. I'm gonna make a bang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. I think that's really important. Is like we've talked about before, and you mentioned is some of these key words is if somebody feels like they lack control of their life, or if they lack power, if they feel like others have too much power over them, that's what kind of draws them into this mindset, into this, like you said, like almost like a cult of thinking if I was the one with the gun, I would be in control, I would have the power. Because I too can relate to that. You know, that's why a big reason why I committed the crime that I did, the shooting that I did in my high school when I was 16, was I wanted that. that control. I wanted to be seen. I felt like I had been ignored, and I wanted people to see me. And I felt like
Yeah.
having that gun would obviously force that upon them.
Yeah. Being like kind of just like look at me, like none of you ever looked at me when I needed help. And then the whole part of the the glorification and the idolization especially is like you see them as martyrs almost, like they died for like this cause of like, oh, they were bullied and misunderstood, and I'm bullied and I'm misunderstood and I totally relate to them.
Hmm.
And a common sort of trend that I see, like a lot of content creators or something, they'll make content about like Columbiners. Like there's this one YouTube video called like Dear Tumblr, School Shooters Aren't Cute. And it's like we know, you know what I mean? We're not like entirely dense. We're not in love with them or think they're, I mean some do. Some have hybristophilia, which is a very real thing. But for most of us it's just like a level of relate. It's a way of coping.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just this very niche way of mentally ill people coming together and coping with the fact that we're outcasted from, you know, maybe our school groups or friend groups, and we're bullied and stuff. And it's a very niche and nuanced. There's a lot of nuance and brevity to like being a Columbiner and how it affect someone, you know what I mean? And why they become a Columbiner, or what compels them to reach out to other people who are also
Yeah.
Columbiners and bond over that shared experience of being like, yeah, Eric was totally me, or like being like Dylan, I shared a lot of traits with Dylan and I resonate with him a lot. And then so people will identify with either Eric and Dylan or both. Well, for me
But
personally, it was
yeah,
Eric.
can we talk about for a second though is because I also wanted to talk about how some people feel like they relate to them, but also don't realize that these guys probably wouldn't have hesitated to kill you, me, or anybody else. Um, they had propane tank that they were trying to set off as a bomb, and I believe it said that they had set it, in some tables where they had problems with people. But in reality, that thing would have had an explosion that would have killed a lot of people in that cafeteria,
Yeah.
including a lot of their friends, probably as well.
Yeah. It is true. The fact that they would have killed you too. And that's a thing that a lot of Columbiners are totally aware of. They're like, yeah, they totally would have killed me, and I'm totally aware of that fact, but that doesn't change the fact that I can still see myself
Hmm.
in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
no, I
like,
get
because
it.
for a lot of us, we're pretty stubborn and hard-headed. I mean, I know I was that stubborn and hard-headed kid, and I've tried to talk some people out of being a Columbiner. Like, I'll still go into those spaces, which is unhealthy of me, but I'll say like, hey, you know, maybe you want to recover from this. You know what I mean? Because I look at it from like a whether you're in it or you're recovering from it. I see it as a pro recovery
Yeah.
thing. And I don't hate these people, you know what I mean? I harbor no hate towards them because I was in that space, right? So it's like I don't hate you and I don't dislike you just because you have Eric Harris as your profile picture. Like, yes, he killed people and I understand that, but when I was super in that space, when I was like having those delusional, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm literally him. I didn't care
Hmm.
about that. I was like, yeah, what about it? You know what I mean?
Well, uh, so here's the thing, right? Because you mentioned earlier that some people are drawn to this community because they feel like they're, it's a bunch of people who are maybe mentally ill or bullied, outcasted, and they feel like this is the community that they can be accepted in. But when we're talking about how we can get people out of that mindset, what is maybe your idea on what's a healthier community that maybe people would still feel connected to and still maybe get some like sense of power from, look up to? It's kind of got a cool aesthetic, but it's a much healthier lifestyle, that it's not um, connecting with other bullies and outcasts because you're connecting over the possible death of other people, but you're connecting over something help. Like in my mind, I'm thinking about like music or
Oh yeah,
just
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
But like, what is something in your mind? How can we have a community, or what communities are out there where people who may feel like they fit in this Columbiner community would fit in elsewhere that would be healthier for them and for all of us?
Well, there are there's shared overlap between like music taste and aesthetical choices and video game interests that Columbiners have with other
Mm-hmm.
communities. So, for example, a trend that you notice that a lot of Columbiners like is they like the same music
Mm-hmm.
artists that they like a lot of the same music artists that Eric and Dylan like. So, Nine Inch Nails, yeah, Autism Spaces, yeah. But I mean, Nine Inch Nails, KMFDM, Rammstein, and then so those kind of more industrial
Right.
bands, right? And then they also played a lot of like early '90s video games, so Doom, Quake, Postal, those games. And then the kind of aesthetic would be like very rivet head, very like grungy, combat boots, cargo pants. There's a very like clear look
Mm-hmm.
to it. Um, and I have some friends who aren't Columbiners who do like they listen to KMFDM and Nine Inch Nails and all those music artists. They play Doom and they like all those things, but they're not Columbiners. They like the stereotypical Columbiner things, but they're not
Right.
Columbiners. So, and I think and that's the thing that I took away from when I kind of left, when I escaped that, hellhole of a community was I was like, you know what? Like I like this music and I like these video games. And just because some douchebag in the 90s who killed people liked them doesn't mean that I can't like them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm taking this and I can reinvent it and make it a part of my identity instead of revolving my identity around him and then making it so that, oh, I'm him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Making
Yeah.
it a part of me. Like I like KMFDM and I like Doom 1 and Doom 2, but I'm not a
Right.
Columbiner. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things, and unfortunately, because of what happened, it's like those things are ruined for a lot of people. Like in the KMFDM community, there's a lot of like disdain um for Columbiners. There's a lot of like, well, rightfully so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like they come into your music community and they're talking about these like guys, and you're just like kind of sick of it all. Um, but a lot of KMFDM fans I know found out from of the band either from what I mean, doing research about Columbine or being a Columbiner, and they're ex Columbiners or they're just that was just a phase of their life that they don't want to think about anymore. But they still took that away from it, like, oh, this band is really good,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, or with Nine Inch
You know
Nails,
what comes
or
to my
any
mind?
video game like
You
that.
know what comes to
Yeah,
my mind is that there is a very big alternative community where it's just like people are into alternative
yeah,
stuff, alternative lifestyles, whether it's, they're into punk, metal, hard rock, the whole aesthetic, the music, and they're a lot of times, very nonviolent. I myself, when I was in prison, uh, because I was always into punk myself, and when I was in prison, I got introduced to people who were straight edge punks, right? Meaning that they love punk music, they love to get up, they love the craziness, but at the same time, they refuse to drink or get high because they realize like I love this lifestyle, but I'm not into the negative aspects of the lifestyle because they've either done it themselves or they've seen others do it themselves, and it's destructive when you get caught up in a lot of the drugs and alcohol. So there's a lot of people out there who have that crazy aesthetic, into the crazy music, and not only are they not into any of the Columbine or very dark aspects that some people are, but you got some people who are looking like that, the crazy mohawk, piercings, tattoos, leather jackets, and they're not even smoking cigarettes. They don't even believe in drinking alcohol. So you got all different types
yeah.
of people within the alternative community. So how can we draw people away from that mentality of being um, connecting themselves with killers and better connecting themselves with who are some more positive role models, even if it's, the lead singer of a band or something like that. But I mean,
Well, I
what would you also
think
say to somebody who's younger and somebody who's right now is thinking about, like, they're kind of getting into that Columbiner true crime version, that darkness. What would you say to them?
Well, for the first question is how we can prevent it. I think it's this long-standing, like there was this whole ripple effect where the news coverage of Columbine and the sensationalism of it really affected the way that it will, like how it was reported. And I think the fact that we focus on the killers themselves too much over than the victims, because what really snapped me out of it for me was learning about each of the victims, like on a personal level. Like Daniel Mauser, like he wanted to be a it was Daniel Mauser, no, it was Steve Kurnow. Stephen Kurnow really liked Star Wars, and I really like Star Wars, and he wanted to be a Top Gun pilot.
Mhm.
And learning that, it like broke my heart, you know what I mean? So learning about them on this like personal level instead of just focusing on Dylan and Eric on that personal level, it really changed my
Because you
perspective.
were
So I think
able to connect
focusing
with the
on,
victims instead of connecting with the killers, right?
yeah, so I think of making so much media and such a big fuss about, and I think we're doing a lot better with that on these more modern shooters with like Salvador Ramos and Audrey Hale. Like, there's not much of this big emphasis on um, them. I mean, it's their crime, yes, but not as them as people. Because like Eric and Dylan were on the cover of Time magazine twice.
Mm,
They were on the cover of Time magazine twice. There's countless movies based off of just them alone. Okay,
right.
right? Zero
Yeah.
Day, Elephant, The Dirties, Mother of Monsters. There's so many movies where it's just about like the
Right.
killer. You know what I mean? And I think Zero Day especially did a number on a lot of people because of how realistic it is and how people also relate to Andre and Calvin since they're direct mirrors of Eric and Dylan. So, but if I were to tell someone who was in my exact position when I was 15, 14, 15, I'd say, like, try to learn about the victims themselves on a personal level. Try to really, like think about, I mean, if it's Columbine specifically, like William Dave Sanders, the teacher who was shot and
Hmm.
killed. Think about, like, think about the kids in the library. Think about their aspirations. Think about how they had most of them had no connection to Eric and Dylan whatsoever. Some of them were as young as 14 years old.
Yeah.
Um, like Daniel Mauser and Steve Kurnow. Um, you know, and I I understand that you think it's cool to have that sort of power, and you if you like Eric or if you like Dylan so much that you want someone to come and protect you over these bullies or to have that power, right? But it's you're going to look back on this one day and it's not going to be cool, and you don't really look cool to anyone else beside yourself and the other people you're in this echo chamber with,
Yeah.
really. I mean, it doesn't look like, looking back on it, I'm like, I didn't look cool when I was just like saying like Eric Harris is literally me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like kind of cringy. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's like you can be
100%.
edgy. You can be edgy, but like there's a fine line between being like edgy and then being like a total like, okay, that's like a really weird loser thing to say. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you're looking for like an edgy character to like or an edgy, you know what I mean? Because I feel like oftentimes in the TCC, people treat these killers like cartoon characters or like characters from a show or a movie. Like there's a lot of that, like the woobification. You know what I mean? Like the fan art. There's like, oh, um, like making up like conversations that Eric and Dylan would have probably had on the computer. Like that's like it's this parasocial sort of relationship.
Hmm.
And and when you yeah, and especially when you think about the victims and like Rachel Scott especially and how she was such a kind soul and how she was just like taken away. It's like Eric and Dylan would not have helped you with your bullying problem, and the person who would likely help you would be Rachel or Mr. Sanders, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it, I mean, if you want to look at an edgy character to look up to, I mean, Anakin Skywalker is right there. You know what I mean? Shadow the Hedgehog is right
Yeah.
there. And I mean, he's pretty edgy, he's cool,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? There's all these different, kind of these edgy characters who like, yeah, they kill people, but I mean, it's Star Wars.
Right.
Or it's, and you can still like them, and it's
So,
it's this fictional. I mean, it's Anakin, but yeah,
so can I ask you, because also Columbine is coming up. It's been 25 years just about.
25 years. Yep.
And for most people who might be, especially, I mean, if you're currently in school, you weren't alive when Columbine happened.
No,
So it's got to feel
it wasn't.
almost,
Yeah.
yeah, it's got to feel almost like a fictional story itself. Like it's almost nothing more than a movie. You don't remember it. You weren't alive for it. You didn't watch it live on TV like those of us who are older, so it might kind of have that layer of separation. Do you think that plays a part where some people are looking, even though you have these shootings going on today? I'm talking about Columbine itself. Does it feel like it's more fiction than fact, than reality?
I think definitely yes, and that also ties back to the sensationalism of it, and the fact that it spawned so much like music and this whole like Columbiner culture, like the culture and aesthetic of it. I think also plays into the fact that it feels so fictional. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it doesn't feel real because I mean, because I'm where I'm from, the ripples of 9/11. You know what I mean? It's still very much
Hmm.
real, but with Columbine it's like, oh, well, I'm not even near that, you know what I mean? And
Right.
also, I was not alive during that time, so it's like not connected, and there's a massive level of separation,
Hmm.
and there's like, and even though some people may have the right intention if they're making art about it or to spread awareness or whatever, most of the time it doesn't come out the way that they want it to, and most of the time this art, for example, there's a there's an artist, a hip hop artist or a rapper. His name is Bones, and he has an album called Teen Witch, which is it's kind of this album about Columbine from the different perspectives of the killers, the victims, and the victims' parents.
Okay.
But most of the people I know who like this album are they just like it because of the edge factor to it, where there's lyrics like um, feeling something like um feeling something like Eric, but I'm looking just like Dylan, and referring to like having a trench coat and walking through the hallways with the sprinklers on, you know what I mean? And it's that visualization of just like being this like trench coat wearing, you know, quote unquote badass with a gun or whatever, even though I mean, and think about it, it's like you're not even like fighting anyone. Like it's not badass. You're shooting defenseless people who, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're
And
not.
when we get to the
Yeah.
core of it, right? When we get to the core of it, I think it all starts with the fact that people want their lives to be better, and then they believe that their lives can't get any better, so that they
Oh yeah.
start to kind of, connect with, suicidal tendencies. And then from suicidal tendencies, you can go into the homicidal tendencies. And so that's why I try to look back and say, what can we do to make your life better so that you're not, feeling powerless, so you're not feeling like you have no control, no meaning, no purpose. Because at the end of the day, if somebody really wants to be like these guys, you're ending your life. Even if you don't kill yourself, even if the police don't kill you, your life as you know it is over. So, and not in a good way. As we just
No,
saw,
not in a good way.
what's his name? Nathan Crumbly in Michigan, 15 years old. He ended the lives of 4 people, injured 7 others, emotionally scarred countless other people, and now he's going to spend life in prison. So he didn't commit suicide, but his life as he knew it was over, and it got 100 times worse. And I also want to ask you, because I want to focus back in on this, how can we help people so that they feel that some type of power, control, meaning, and purpose? But you had also sent me the letter from a school shooter from the 90s who I think is in Oregon, and he's doing, many life sentences, but then it got reduced to like 160 years, still a life sentence. But didn't he produced a letter basically not only apologizing, but he wrote a letter saying that the shooting that he committed didn't give him like that sense of satisfaction that he thought it would in a dark way. He didn't get it wasn't like what he thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
can we touch upon I know I just threw a few different things at you,
No,
but
yeah.
can we talk about that as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, I mean, the adrenaline, it's going to wear off, right? Like you're going to be in that shooting and you're going to be like, "Oh, this is great." And then once you kill that first person, it's over,
Hmm.
right? Once you do that, or once you even begin the stage of planning and actually like you're walking to school or you're driving to school and you have that, it's like if you don't turn back, it's over. You know what I mean? There's no turning back, and it's an irreversible change. And so I feel like one way we can help people get out of that Columbiner mindset, because unfortunately it can get dangerous to the point where they're thinking of hurting others or hurting themselves. But usually it starts with wanting to hurt themselves, right? And
Right.
then the hurting others is just an added on aspect of it. Um, I think the destigmatization of talking about, like, I mean, mental health, I mean, we still have a long way to go when it comes to, you know, being able to talk about it openly. Because, like, even though I had friends who were like, oh, yeah, mental health matters. But when I was having this Columbine fixation, I was being, outcasted and ridiculed for it. Rightfully so, but it hurt. You know what I mean? To be told that, like, your hyperfixations, it's like, you know what I mean? In a space that I thought was accepting. You
Yeah,
know what
because
I mean?
even within the mental health community, there's still like a boundary that if you go beyond it, even a lot of people within the mental health community will not feel comfortable around you and possibly outcast you. And like when I open up and share my story, and there's so many people who say, "Oh, well, I've been severely depressed or I've even been suicidal, but I would have never done anything like that. I never even thought
Yeah, well,
about
that's you.
that."
That's you. Like
Exactly.
we're different. Yeah.
Everybody's mental illness, and we're not blaming mental illness alone, but everybody's mindset can be different. And I think that it's important. The reason why I have continued to be so public is because I think that it's important not only to talk about mental health, but to talk about the darkest aspects of mental health and to give people like
Yeah.
you and so many others the ability not to feel that what you're thinking is okay, but that you can talk about it at least with somebody. And because there's something about saying it out loud, not just typing it online with some other people, but there's something about talking about it out loud with somebody.
It
It
gets it off your chest, definitely.
it
Yeah.
definitely changes your mindset. And as Gigi is talking about, people can change. And the first thing that you have to do in order to change is to be able to talk about it. And we need to have a safe space where people can talk about these very dark issues, because if you can't talk about it, you're not going to get the help you need. And God forbid, you're either going to go further down this path and you may not hurt others, but you may hurt yourself. And I want to stop people not just from hurting other people, I want to stop people from wanting to kill themselves, because that's one of the leading causes of death with teenagers right now is suicide. That's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Because also, if
Yeah.
we
And
eliminate the suicidal tendencies, all of the people who are thinking about doing a mass shooting, if you get rid of that suicidal tendency, they won't want to do anything else, because it all starts with that anger, maybe towards others, but you're thinking, I don't care about my life anymore. So you know what? Now I don't care about the lives of others. So if we focus on and if we help people, and this is why I talk a lot with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, because they know not only with the suicide, but when it comes to these things, are acts of murder suicide. And if we can really prevent people, or not prevent people, but work with people who have not only suicidal tendencies, but sometimes those homicidal tendencies, trust me, there's so much that we can do to help people. And so let me see. Bowling Lover says, I attended a funeral that past week because of your friend killed themselves. I'm so sorry to hear that. And when somebody kills themselves, it's not only taboo to obviously to talk about it, but it's taboo, I think, even within family and friends to talk about their loved one. Where you don't know what to say, you don't know how to respond, and everybody's afraid to say the wrong thing, or everybody's, so sometimes ashamed that you have a friend or a family member that has ended their own life. And that's why I love the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, because I started going when I came home from prison. They have these community walks. And if you want, go on to afsp.org. They have community walks all around the country. And one of the things that they do, which I love, is they have these necklace beads, right? And they're all different colors, and you can wear whatever colors represents you. Whether you're there just to support, there's a color for that. If you've ever thought about or attempted suicide, you wear that color beaded necklace. If you lost a family member, you wear that color necklace. If you have a friend that you lost to suicide, you wear that color. And all of these people now at this community event can see everybody else who wears the same colors as them, who has experienced the same loss or the same feelings as them. And that's a way in which people can come together and to feel that support. And I think that's important, that more people and more youth get connected with organizations like this, because then you can see just how many other people have struggled. Even if it's just a personal struggle, even if you've never lost anybody, you can still see all those people who are just showing up, like myself. I think I have never lost a family member or friend to suicide, but I've thought about it and I've attempted it. And I get to go there and I see how many other people have been through that experience themselves. And I think that that's important, because then you don't feel alone anymore. Because I want everybody out there to know you're not alone. Even if you've had these deep, dark thoughts of either hurting yourself or others, you're not alone. And things can get better. And they will get
Yeah.
better. It doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately, but you know what? There's a lot of us out here who connect with you. We've been through the darkness, we're through it on the other side, and now we want to reach back and help those who are currently going through that struggle. And you're not alone. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more, but I want to tell everybody about 988. I'm sure so many people here already know about it, but if you ever do think about harming yourself, please feel free to call or text 988. It is the suicide hotline. You can talk with somebody, or you can text with somebody if you feel more comfortable doing that. It's as simple as that, 988. Please know that you're not alone and somebody can talk with you right now. But Lou, so I see that you're back. Um,
I am back.
and I think that it's really important that your voice is heard. Um, and I think that, as
Thank you.
controversial as it is for my voice to be heard, I know that it's very difficult for a lot of people, but these conversations need to be had. And they need to be had with the people who have experienced it. From my point of view, unfortunately, we've heard from survivors and family members of survivors, and sadly, they get ignored oftentimes. Not only ignored, they get disrespected just as much, of hatred and all like that I've experienced, which a lot of it, I get it. I understand why people don't like me. But survivors have experienced that as well, especially if they're outspoken, whether you're talking about mental health or gun reform or whatever you believe in, they still get attacked, and it's disgusting. So I
It
think that
is.
it's important that we have everybody from all different points of view being able to come to the table and to talk about these things. Because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We all want a better life for ourselves, for those around us, and for our communities to be safer. And a lot of us believe that one of the main focuses we can be looking at is this mental health aspect, is how can we build people up, how can we educate people on what mental health is, and how you can express yourself after you get in touch with yourself, and how you can connect with other people. And I think that that's so important these days. And I want to ask you, Lou, because we've been talking recently, and I've told you about my recent talks with Scarlett Lewis, who lost her 6-year-old son, Jesse, in Sandy Hook. You mentioned earlier Adam Lanza and how he was somebody who was into Columbine and all like that. Well, Scarlett's, she lost her son that day.
Yeah.
And obviously it's devastated her, but at the same time, she's managed to focus on choosing love, right? That's the name of her nonprofit, is the Choose Love Movement. And you and I have talked about that because I believe that your voice is important, and that, you right now yourself are still struggling, but you're still battling to choose love yourself. I wanted to ask your thoughts on all of that right there. What do you think?
I, I think I think it's a very powerful thing that
Mm-hmm.
she decided to do. It's kind of this big like F you to Adam Lanza. Like, I'm not gonna let what you did dictate me in my life. Like, you may have taken my son, but I still rise above
Mm,
it, in this phoenix like matter. And I feel like in a way we can all do that, even if we haven't lost someone to a shooting. You know what I mean? Like, every day I wake up and I'm like, I'm not going to let Eric Harris affect me today. I'm not going to let Dylan Klebold, infiltrate my mind. I'm going to not do that. You know what I mean? And I make an effort every day to
yeah.
move away from that because, yes, Columbine happened 25 years ago, and it still affects so many, even people who weren't alive then, including me. So it's like I have to make an effort to be like, you know what, Eric, not today, Eric, not today.
Well,
Um,
and that's one of the things that Scarlett teaches, right? Is one of the most powerful things we can do is recognize when that negative thought pops up in our head, because it's perfectly natural for all of us to have different levels of negativity
yeah,
pop up within us. But once you recognize that one negative thought, if you can just turn that one negative thought into a positive thought, like you said, not today. I'm not going, nope, that's not me today. You know, the more that we do that, the healthier we will be mentally, and in the end, physically as well. Um,
yeah.
so I think that's
And
great that you're able to do that.
something that me and my therapist talk about a lot is protective
Hmm.
factors, or just trying to make it one day at a time, or trying to make it a month at a time, even when I'm at my lowest. Know that, like, okay, I still have this to look forward to. I still
Yeah.
have this to do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I try to do that. I book a concert, I buy, tickets to a convention or something that I can look forward to, so that in the back of my mind, if I'm feeling extremely suicidal, I'm like, no, I haven't done this yet. I need to, you know what I mean? There's so much stuff that I haven't done that I need to do.
Hmm.
And it gets scary sometimes when I can be like, well, I don't care about that. I just, I need to get this pain out. But I mean, those protective, just making it one day at a time. That's kind of how I look at it. If I'm really, at my lowest
Yeah.
point, is one day at a time. I think that's how Jordan Peterson put it. Um, and he's done a lot of great talks about like suicide and um, not today. I'll do it tomorrow. Just keep procrastinating it. Or if you're especially just naturally good at procrastinating,
Yeah.
just procrastinate it. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm tired. Let's do it another time. And then eventually, you keep.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that while I was in prison, I was originally really inspired um, by people who were in recovery from addiction. And that's
I'm
one
back.
of the,
Sorry.
what's that?
I said I'm back. Sorry, I had a mute.
Oh, that's all right. Um, so I was inspired while I was in prison by those who were in recovery from addiction. And that's the saying, is one day at a time, is when you have these dark thoughts of using popping up in your mind, that's what they say is, nah, you just got to take it one day at a time. I'm not going to do it today. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I'm not going to do it today. And it's also that each one teach one that I love in the recovery community for addiction. And that's kind of the mentality that I have with this is, you know what? I've never dealt with addiction, thankfully, but I've dealt with the suicidal and the chaos in my mind.
Well,
Maybe I can reach out and connect with
self-harm too.
others. What's
There's a
that?
lot of overlap with there's a lot of overlap with self-harm
Hmm.
and having those thoughts of like cutting. You could, use that as a stand-in for drugs. Like, I'm not gonna cut today, just like one day at a time. And then eventually you're gonna procrastinate it so much where, maybe you do find help, you do find a therapist, and while you're procrastinating it in the back of your mind, I'm not gonna kill myself just yet. You know what I mean? I still got this to do, or, I have this concert, a couple of months out, let me wait until then.
Right.
And then eventually, um, if you put in the work and the effort, and it is a lot of work on my or our parts, you know what I mean, to, to get better, you're like, I don't really want to do it anymore. But that's still, unfortunately, something I struggle with, where I have these extremely low points where I need to resort to do it going, not today, I'll just do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One day at a time. Um, and maybe I'll be like, maybe I'll do it next year, or maybe I'll do it the year after that, or the year after that, as long as it's not like at this moment, you know what I mean, or any time in the very very near future, because then I'm gonna say, oh, I'll do it in 2025, but then by the time 2025 comes, the likelihood of me actually like killing myself is probably going to be very low, because I'm going to have so much stuff to
Right.
do. You know what I mean? If you fill your itinerary with stuff,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to form those thoughts. And I mean, like, putting work in, like picking up a hobby really helps. Like, putting time out of your day to work, you know, and and I know some people can't do manual labor, but something that has to do with moving around physically, or, doing something, maybe I mean, the brain is a muscle, working out that your brain, something that, to do,
Hmm.
to give yourself something to do, because an idle mind is a dangerous mind. I mean, the whole timeline, the whole time when I got into Columbine was during probably the most like boring time of my life, was during the pandemic, where I had nothing to do. I was doing nothing. I was at home all day. I didn't have school. I couldn't go see my
Hmm.
friends. And now I have school. I have, an internship. I'm doing volunteer work. And because I'm filling up my schedule and my itinerary with all these things, I have barely any time to even think about like Eric or Dylan, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'm just so glad that I can move away from that time of my life and move on. Like, oh, I can just shed it, just like shed the skin and just drop it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do a little shake. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. You're
Just like step out of it and just move on.
like you said, you used to be like consuming all this media, that was on Columbine and other dark subject matters. But now you're spending all this time, whether it's working or doing other things, and you're able to consume more healthier, positive things, you know?
Yeah, there's and I think if you're craving for that, like, oh, I need this like edgy guy in like a trench coat or whatever, there's other media that can act as a stand-in for it, that's fictional and entirely harmless.
Right.
Um, I mean, there's like comic books, movies, video games. There's like all that stuff that can act as a stand-in, that doesn't have to include, real people being
Yeah.
harmed. And I think, you know, I think doing a lot of self discovery also might help with that. Like, finding out who you truly are, what you really enjoy, and trying to find your own identity that doesn't have to do with Columbine. Because for a lot of Columbiners, it's like a big part of their identity. It's like they resonate with Eric and Dylan to the point where it's like they absorb them as people.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
trying to find yourself also helps.
Yeah.
And protective factors, one day at a time. And even with because I also have suffered with eating disordered or disordered thoughts surrounding eating in the past, and I kind of view the whole Columbiner thing like that. So from a pro recovery standpoint, so it's whether you're in recovery or you're having those disordered thoughts and you're having disordered behaviors. So the disordered thoughts in, you know, I guess the Columbine view would be like, oh, thinking about Eric and Dylan almost every day, you know, making a conscious effort to, let's say, project them throughout clothing choices or listen to their music or, act like them. And then, or those would be like the disordered behaviors, right? Not saying that it's a disorder, but how I view it is you're recovering from it, right? It's a thing to recover from because it's actively ailing you. Like it's actively like pulling you down
Right.
into this dark, deep pit of just agony, and there's hatred, and there's like all this like anger and wrath. No pun intended. I didn't mean to say wrath because of the thing he's wearing on
Yeah.
his shirt, but that was kind of a oh. But yeah, truly. And then also realizing that like these guys weren't as cool as they seemed. Like they were really insecure losers. I think that also kind of gave you a sobering like wake up call. Like, oh, these guys were like losers. Eric didn't know how to
Right.
spell. These guys were losers. um, and then realizing like, and what they did is a loser
Right.
thing to do. Not say that what I mean. I think you can admit. I don't know if you'd say this about what you did, but would you say that
Oh,
like it's a loser thing to
110%.
do?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's a pathetic thing. And, it's something where people
So,
think that, like,
and sometimes you need some tough love. Sometimes you just it's a loser thing to do.
yeah,
Stop it. A little slap on the wrist.
let's be
Stop being a
honest, right?
Columbiner. Stop it.
Let's call it for what it is. It's a bitch boy move, right? Uh,
Yes,
but,
yes, yes,
um,
yes.
but here's the thing, though, is that although what they did and what I did was bitch boy move, I want to make sure that people realize that those who may be in that mindset, those who may be
You're not
in a dark
a
mind
bitch
state,
boy.
you're not a bitch
It's
boy. You're just
okay.
somebody who is struggling. And we don't want you to go down that path where you do something like what I did as a bitch boy, right?
Yeah,
We want you
yeah,
to be somebody who is successful, has a good life that you want, and it is possible and it will happen. We just have to connect with each other more. And that's a lot of what I've been trying to do is build connections and trying to put it out there and how everybody can be a little bit more open and a little bit more honest, a little bit more vulnerable. And that way, the more that we all connect with one another, even if other people think and act completely differently than you do, that's okay, right?
yeah. And
It's okay to
you're
be
doing a great
different.
job at that.
You know, just because I love one type of music and you love something else doesn't mean you're a bitch boy, right? Doesn't mean you're a
Yeah,
loser.
yeah,
It just means that we like different things. And, you know, so it's really important because I also don't believe in, so I'll tell you this, right? So
yeah,
Scarlett Lewis and I, like we talked about, she really told me that she dislikes the anti-bullying campaign because she said you basically just end up bullying the bullies. No, we want to help people. That's why she chooses love. That's what she causes her organization is the Choose Love movement. Even for the bullies, even for the assholes, even for the ones who are doing dumb shit, let's be honest. We got to choose love and help them get on a better path
yeah.
because
And
those who are
it's like,
happy don't do bitch boy shit. They're not bullying people. They're not coming online and trolling people. All the people who do that, they have insecurities. They have things that they're miserable about. And if we can help them, not bully them, but if we can actually help even the bullies and the people that they bully, if we can help all of those people so that they can better cope with whatever chaos is going on within their lives, then we'll have less people who are suffering and we'll have less bitch boy shit at the end of the day. So I don't know if Lou had to jump off real quick, but I do want to start wrapping up. And I do want to say that I think,
I'm back. Sorry.
no, that's okay. I think it's very powerful, talking with you.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. And I do want to wrap things up, but I think it would be good for you to just end on telling people, you know, what is it that you think can best help those who are in the mindset that you once were?
I think what would have helped me, or when I was in the midst of all that, or
Yeah.
what would help someone, is having someone to listen to, having someone, I mean, well, having someone to listen to you, um, just ramble, like being able to talk about it, really having that freedom and that space, having a space to talk about it without judgment,
Mm,
without feeling like this is such a taboo thing and oh my God, I'm going to get like called to the principal's office for it. Because that's a thing that has happened before where I got called to the principal's office for just talking about it. You know what
hmm.
I mean? Not feeling like, I need to hide, this interest from people.
Yeah.
Having the space to be able to talk about it, understand why, and then the more you speak about it out loud, the more you hear yourself say it, it kind of gives you that introspective thinking of like, oh, why do I think like that in the first place? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think more, I guess, just like, and if you already have a therapist, make the most of it, which is, I think, something I wasn't really doing during that time where I was just kind of, messing around. I wasn't really taking my sessions seriously and making the most of my 45 minutes a week. Um, is I would have told myself, make the most of your therapy sessions and find a place, and for me that place was you. When I reached out was like just to be able to talk about it and talk about my interests and in a judgment free zone where I can feel heard and feel seen and then kind of allow that judgment free, okay, well, why do you think like that? You know what I mean? Like a without judgment asking what makes them seem cool to you. And then the more you like say it out loud, the more you explain exactly why, that introspective thinking allows you to be more self aware. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Even though most Columbiners are already, self aware, we know like, oh yeah, we know that this is wrong. A lot of them do know like, liking Eric and Dylan to this level is
Right.
not okay. It's not normal. But it's the kind of the grit of it, you know what I mean? The little details of like why, what exactly makes them cool to you.
Hmm.
Um, and user, be true to you always. This interview is going to be uploaded on John's account and to his YouTube channel, so you can catch it there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
you
right.
didn't miss it. It's on the internet. It's there forever.
Yeah, so for like you said, for anybody who's interested, if you only heard this last little bit, or if you are interested in hearing more of it again, I will be able to have this live posted on my account, so you can check it out anytime. And same thing on my YouTube channel, same name as on here, John Seeking Peace. And Lou, I think we'll wrap it up. And I
All
thank you
right.
so much for this. And I definitely will share with you any feedback that I get, but I think
Woo-hoo.
that it's been great. And I want to hear more from you in the future about your continued journey. All right?
All right. Thank you so much.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
everyone.
All right, everyone.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
again for joining us. And like I just said, this will be posted on my Instagram and on my YouTube. And I hope it's helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me with any feedback you have. I know these are very dark and difficult conversations and something you might not have heard before, but I think it's important to explore this and to hopefully learn from it in a positive way in which we can help people more in the future. So,
All
good night,
right.
everybody. Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.